We are good to go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Western Sydney Business Podcast. I'm here with the Mayor of Wollondilly Shire Council, Matthew Deeth. G'day, Matt.
G'day, Thomas. Good to be with you.
Yeah, and you too. And you too. Thanks for joining me via Zoom. Everyone's adapting to working from home and all these great new things. So how long have you been the Mayor of Wollondilly?
So roughly it's coming up to about 2 years that I've been mayor, but I've been a councillor since 2016. So coming up 4 years, and we've got the good news that we'll be extended another further year by Office of Local Government. So so looking forward to getting a whole lot more done with the extra time.
Yep, great. And so have you always been in politics, or what were you doing before your time in politics?
No, actually, this is my first foray into politics. I actually work for a marketing agency in North Sydney.
Nice.
So I've certainly had experience in the private sector, but certainly getting into the public side of things is quite different and has been a really good learning curve for me.
Yep. And so I saw online that you have lived in Wollondilly your whole life. So did you travel in North Sydney for when you were with the marketing agency?
Yeah, so I'm very grateful that I live close to the end of the MacArthur line in Sydney, which means that I can get into the city quite quickly on public transport.
Excellent.
Which is great.
So to give everyone an idea, some of the areas in the Wollondilly are Picton, Menangle, Wilton and Tarmore. So those are some of the probably more major ones, at least off the top of my head. A couple of things I got down here that Wollondilly is on the cusp of the biggest increase in growth the region has ever seen. And obviously there's a lot of talk about it as a residential growth pocket. Are you seeing that and are you pushing that?
Yeah, look, certainly, I guess to take a step back and give you a bit of a broader context for Wollondilly and also the region. Wollondilly is effectively, if you picked up Wollondilly and took it and put it over the Greater Sydney area, which is the Sydney Bowl, it's the same size. So it's a really big area.
Crazy.
We have, in terms of the makeup of the Shire, there's no one real central, I guess, town centre as such. We've got 17 villages. So it's that very villagey, English style type of local government area, which is has positives and negatives as well. I guess the broader context for the region is, as you are aware, we're situated in a peri-urban fringe where we're starting to make the shift from a more rural scene to a more rural and urban area. So
I understand. And would that be like Tarmore and Thelmy, those areas that are being developed? Is that what you're alluding to?
Yeah, well, certainly the areas, we've actually got a quite clear vision for what we anticipate for how we're going to be managing the growth, and that is to actually really focus our efforts on the growth corridor. So the growth corridor really extends from the airport up in the west at around Penrith and the Warragamba area, and it actually follows down through Camden and the southwest all the way down to Wilson. And that's where we're trying to focus our growth. And ensuring that we can maintain that rural lifestyle that everybody is wanting to come out and live in Wollondilly.
I understand. Yeah, you don't move to Wollondilly for CBD lifestyle. I understand that completely.
Yeah. So and I mean the other reason behind that is we want to ensure that we can focus all the energy and the infrastructure dollars that are required to servicing these new areas to one key focused area that's delivered in sequence, so that rather than a piecemeal ad hoc approach that goes right across the whole Shire doesn't make sense, and we can't service it from infrastructure over the future years. So I guess that's where we're coming from, and Wollondilly is very big compared to a lot of other LGAs in the Greater Sydney area. So we've got a lot of room to move, and we've got a lot of opportunities, and we have the ability to be picky in Wollondilly. We can actually have the ability to be able to choose the very best of the best. So just from a planning context, just to give you an idea, going back probably 12 months ago, we had 46 or so planning proposals. Now, just the average for any one council is probably maybe 2 to 3. So that meant that we can actually really focus on what do we really want for our area. We're embracing the growth that's going to be coming.
Yeah.
But then also really wanting to focus and being able to say, yes, this fits with our vision, and no, this doesn't.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's really good. Not everything has to be, residential lot subdivisions as small as possible, maximizing profit. Like people are, as we said before, not moving to Wollondilly to live, right next to people. You need that rural lifestyle in Sydney. Absolutely.
Yes, and look, we've got the space to be able to provide those different types of housing types as well. We very much acknowledge that we need to be providing much more in terms of housing variability and
Yep.
affordability. So, like, I think that we have the opportunity to be able to get it right in Wollondilly, unlike other areas that may not have as much flexibility to be able to deliver.
Yep. No, and fair enough. I was looking online, and the 2016 census said that the population was approximately 50,000 people. Has that grown since that last came out? Do you know those figures?
Yeah. Yeah. So look, we're looking at roughly at the moment, I think about 57,000 residents in the area. We've got 27,000 ratepayers roughly.
Yeah.
And we're certainly got a growth rate that is above 2% at this stage. So where the growth has been coming from has been around our existing local towns and villages in the area of Picton, Tarmor, Thirlmere. We've probably seen about a rezoning of about 5 to 10,000 like a yield in that area. And so that's slowly been coming online, and that's where we've seen the growth come from.
Fantastic. And so I saw on you posted on Twitter, you recently received $30 million in funding as a part of the Western City Deal Livability Fund. So where are those funds going to be going? What are people going to be seeing changing in Wollondilly as a result of those funds?
Yeah, so look, this is part of the Western City Deal, which I'm not too sure if you're familiar with, but it's a partnership between all three levels of government that really focuses on delivering the Western City, which is part of the Greater Sydney Commission's three city plan, and we actually form part of the Western City. And the City Deal is really about around the airport and enacting a whole range of things around there and seeing the growth and providing a place that's going to be fantastic for residents to be able to work, live and play. And that's where the Livability Fund came from. There was $15 million put up by the state and federal government, which we're very grateful for. And then we've matched the other third of the funding to actually get to $20 million. Now that $20 million has actually gone to a range of projects, but the main one is on our cultural civic precinct, which is in Picton, which is going to provide a great community space with a performance space, a upgraded to our existing Shire Hall, a new library into the future, a market space like outdoor village green, and a whole range of other multi-purpose buildings for community use as well. So that's that project, and then within all the other villages, we've had smaller scale projects from regional skate parks to upgrade of our regional sporting facilities to exercise equipment being placed, outdoor exercise equipment being placed in each village.
Yeah, so really focusing on the livability, right, for all these little smaller towns. You're really focusing on the livability of Wollondilly as opposed to just maximising development, but it's more about the livability of the whole place is the feel that I'm getting.
Yeah, look, it's and I can see that the industry is also moving in this direction along with government as well, is that it's around making great places. So we're really focused on what is it that makes this place such a great place to live, in making sure that we encapsulate that and enhance that into the future, so that people are able to, be able to work, live and play in the areas that they actually live. I think one of the great goals of the Greater Sydney Commission's plan was the 30-minute city. Now, yes, it's very a lofty goal, but certainly I think that's something we should all be striving for. And COVID-19 and just the environment we find ourselves in has really shifted the paradigm in how we actually look at how we're able to work in the places that we also live as well. So I think it's going to be fundamentally shifted, and we're going to see a completely different way of how we build our communities into the future.
Well, speaking of Picton, I had a question come in from a listener. So this is from Matthew Sartori of Shear Property Group. And he asks, what kind of social services do you think are needed in Picton? Example, disability housing, childcare and healthcare.
Yeah, look, this is a really great question from Matthew. It is a major deficit that we do have in Wollondilly is provided of those social services that help to underpin the needs in the community. Disability service is one of them. So respite care, at the moment there is only one location in the Shire where you can get, and there are limited spaces there.
Yep.
So there is a real strong need for more of that within the Shire. Otherwise, you could actually travel to Bankstown. So that's a 45-minute.
Yeah, that's a substantial journey.
Yeah, that needs respite for anyone that they're caring for. Similarly, with the social needs around social housing, we have quite a number of when domestic violence comes into play, and you've got mothers that are actually needing to be separated, or the families need to be broken up in some way. The only place that they can go to is either Campbelltown or much further into Bankstown and on. There is no housing in Wollondilly that's able to provide that service. So it's a real need that's needed out in the Shire, and certainly something that hasn't been solved yet.
Okay. Another question I saw online was the MacArthur 2040 growth plan. And that's been the Glenfield to MacArthur corridor. That seems to have been thrown around for, quite some time, but I haven't really seen anything happen. Are you guys impacted by the MacArthur 2040 growth, and what does that mean for Wollondilly?
Yeah, so the MacArthur 2040 plan actually takes into consideration that growth corridor that I was talking about. So from Campbelltown all the way down to Wilton is what makes up that Greater MacArthur plan. It is in the early stages. We have done a fair amount of work, but there needs to be more done in that planning space, particularly around the infrastructure needs, and that's something that we are concerned about. And certainly from council's perspective, our focus is on developing Wilton in sequence first. We don't want to develop the whole of the corridor at once, otherwise it's just we're going to be, the infrastructure dollars will be competing with the same infrastructure dollars. So we want to do it in sequence. It was good to see that Rob Stokes actually came out the other day, towards the end of last year, and actually announced a new way forward for a number of large planning proposals for the state. And Greater MacArthur fell into that bucket of a collaborative space, working alongside the councils and the state government to deliver that corridor. So that's really encouraging that the state government has seen and understood that councils do play a very strong role in actually putting together these plans. So looking forward to moving that forward in future, in the next year, actually.
Great. Okay. I suppose these things just you'd rather plan now and get it right than rush it just to have a new planning document out there to look pretty, I guess. And I think, credit to you guys for taking the time to do it correctly.
And look, the other thing is that we also acknowledge our role in the economic recovery for COVID-19. So we are actually doing everything we possibly can to speed up actually the delivery. We see that as the best place to be able to put some runs on the board and get some really strong construction economic activity occurring. Meanwhile, while we're planning the rest of the corridor. So yes, we're boosting and speeding up Wilton, and yes, we're continuing to plan for the rest of the corridor.
Okay, great. Another audience question came in from Nick Estephen of Colliers International. Speaking of development, his question is, how has the mining subsidence through corridor and surrounding suburbs affected development proposals? Is there any anticipation on working with relevant authorities to mitigate restrictions and to push along the development of the land? And it's a pretty broad question with mining. Answer it as best you can. I just thought I'd make sure I'd ask that, seeing as we're talking about development.
Yeah, absolutely. Tough question. It is something that hasn't really been fully resolved. I mean, mining is one of the largest employers in Wollondilly, and we have two major large mines in Wollondilly. The subsidence issue varies depending on where the location of the planning proposal is. For Wilton, it has been resolved by the proponents, who were able to go out and actually negotiate a deal with the two mining companies to actually resolve the mining rights there, which was a really great outcome for the growth of that corridor. The other planning proposals is being difficult, particularly around areas around Bargo, where there are plans currently in before Department of Planning in relation to the expansion of the Tahmoor Colliery. So that means that areas around Bargo are not necessarily being considered by the Department of Planning at this stage because of mine subsidence. Other areas that mining has already been completed in are actually ready to go now. We're actually seeing that coming out the other side of those different areas can actually proceed. But I mean, while mining is a challenge, I think the other thing is you've got to really understand the new planning context that we find ourselves in with the local strategic planning statements that have just been brought in by all local governments. And that is, most planning proposals will now actually have to go through that process of being assessed against those, as well as the district plans. So yes, mine subsidence is an issue, but we've also then got to actually make sure that the existing planning proposals adhere to the new planning framework.
Yeah, and I think you guys have the space, as you said, developing Wilton first, and the developers and the relevant authorities have, spoken and sorted those issues out themselves. So it can happen, but there's no need to basically rush anything when there is so much space. I think it's a pretty smart thing to do. One topic that is, the talk of the town everywhere is the Western Sydney Airport. What's the sentiment amongst about Western Sydney Airport amongst the people of Wollondilly? Positive, negative? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, look, from my understanding of the community is that within the greater Wollondilly area, it's actually quite neutral. Everybody's actually thinks it's it's a good thing that the airport will be there on our doorstep. It will be similar travel times for most of Wollondilly as it is to the existing airport at Mosca. I guess the areas up around Silverdale and Warragamba are still feeling quite cautious about it because the flight paths are still yet to be determined and won't be. I think the first draft is going to be out in 2021 or with the finalisation by 23 or something or other. So there's a lot of uncertainty up there. There's a lot of uncertainty around the restrictions on land uses in and around there. There's been a number of planning proposals up the Warragamba Silverdale area that haven't been able to proceed because of the aircraft that may have I guess the state government and the federal government have made it pretty clear that they really don't want to have any of those land use conflicts underneath the corridors like we have seen in the Sydney areas. So they're quite focused on making sure that they preserve those spaces for compatible land uses, which is what we're starting to work through with the landholders up there at this stage. But I mean, ultimately, it's a game changer for the region, and I think that's how we've got to think about it. Of course, this isn't just, the airport isn't just about Wollondilly. This is actually a game changer for the whole of Western Sydney and further down. So I mean, we're talking to the Illawarra about how do we start to build the case for infrastructure investment with linking down into the Illawarra. So upgrade at Picton Highway and those types of strategic focuses that are really going to make sure that we really get the most opportunity out of the Western Sydney Airport.
Yeah, I think that's great. It's about Western Sydney Airport is coming. It affects you guys. How can you also then branch out and utilise that to connect with the other regions and improve Wollondilly, not just through the airport, but as you said, Illawarra as well, which is a very, very smart thing to be doing. Credit to you.
But it's also about playing to our strengths as well. So we have a strong market gardens and agricultural base here.
Certainly.
So playing to that agribusiness opportunity there is a no-brainer. Same with the tourism opportunity. I mean, that's why we've put up our latest, which is the Great Burragarang Valley Walk, which is a 316k loop walk, which we know is going to be a game changer for tourism and building that iconic itinerary right down to the south coast and back.
Beautiful. No, that is good. There's a lot happening. Anything else that's happening in Wollondilly you want to talk to us about and let people know about?
Look, I think one of the challenges is, yes, we do have a large amount of residential growth that will be coming into Wollondilly with 16,000 planned at Wilton and then a further 18,000 in the whole rest of the Greater Macarthur corridor. But I think one of the things that we're really focused on is provision of jobs. And that's why we're looking at how do we actually fast track and improve or rezone employment lands in Wollondilly to really try and I mean, we've got an aspirational goal of 1 job for every house that's actually going to be coming into Wollondilly. So we need to be doing just as much work to be the catalyst in bringing jobs to the region as well. So we're focused on lands at Malden and Wilton. And rezoning those because that makes sense strategically to focus them in and around the
existing. There's some existing industrial there, some major highways. And if you look at, and I have looked at the Wilton plan, there is a lot of future employment areas under investigation. So it seems you guys really want to push that employment.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we don't want to be a satellite suburb. We don't want to be a dormitory suburb where people actually have to travel out of. That's one of the challenges of Wollondilly is close to 70% of the Shire actually travel outside of the Shire to actually for employment. We want to actually reverse that. So we need to be doing everything we possibly can to actually stop that from occurring.
That's great. You guys have some fantastic ambitions. I look forward to, continuing to watch them. I thank you very much for coming on the podcast. I think we've covered some great information on Wollondilly. I think there's a lot to be excited about over the next, 2 and even 5 years for this region.
Yeah, absolutely. We're excited, and look, come back and check in 5 years' time to see the changes occurred.
Perfect. I look forward to it. Matt, thanks very much for coming on the podcast. I look forward to having you in another episode. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Thomas.
See ya.